I feel the liftoff. The clock has started. Roger, 0G. I feel fine. Godspeed, John Glenn.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Rocket Tranquility, we copy you on the ground.
New possibilities are opening up for scientific cooperation between countries.
2, 1, 0, 0,
Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
Discovery, go and throttle up.
Discovery Roger, go for deploy.
Thank you, and to everybody in the shuttle program, the crew is go for launch.
Roger, nice to be in orbit.
We have followed in their footsteps to get us where we are today.
Good morning and welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Jasmine Hopkins and you are watching the post-launch news conference for NASA's SpaceX Crew 7 mission. Early this morning at 3:27 a.m., a crew of 4 lifted off for the International Space Station. And this marks the first time in NASA's commercial crew program history that each crew member on board represented a different space agency. This was NASA's Jasmine Mugbelly, ESA astronaut Andy Mogensen, JAXA's Satoshi Furukawa, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Konstantin Borisov. Joining us this morning is a distinguished panel of experts eager to talk to you about today's mission. Starting from my left, we have Ken Bowersox, Associate Administrator for NASA's Human Exploration and Operations Mission Directorate, followed by Steve Stitch, Manager of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, Joel Montalbano, Manager of the International Space Station Program, Benji Reed, Director of Crew Mission Management for SpaceX, Hiroshi Sasaki, Vice President Director General of JAXA, and Josef Aschbacher, Director General of ESA. Our panel will be taking questions from the media on the phone and right here in the room, but before we get to you, they will each take a moment for opening remarks. And Ken, we'll start with you.
Hey, thanks, Jasmine. And thanks, everybody, for joining us so early in the morning. Boy, what a beautiful launch. The 7th to the International Space Station, and with 4 international crew members. Really an exciting thing to see. We all got an extra day in Florida. You probably remember we were going to try yesterday. I was so proud of the team, the way they decided to take a little time to complete the analysis on one of the components aboard the Dragon. It shows how well our teams work together and the way they feel empowered to analyze the data and make sure our vehicles are really ready before they fly. The safety of the crew is very important to all of us, and it's really neat to see how well our SpaceX, NASA, and international team works to ensure that we're always ready. The mission's just started. They're many days ahead of the crew that just launched. They still have to dock the station. They've got a lot of exciting science to do while they're up there aboard the station, and then we need to get them home. And of course, we've got the Crew 6 return coming after this crew reaches station. So we have plenty of excitement ahead of us and plenty of things that we need to pay attention to. Again, thanks one more time for being here with us this morning. I'm going to pass it over to Steve Stitch, our Commercial Crew Program Manager.
Thanks, Ken, and thanks for your interest this morning and coming to the briefing. You know, we had a great launch today. The weather was about as good as it can get here in Florida. I don't quite think I've seen the weather so good. The weather was great up the coast as well, so we were fortunate to take an opportunity to launch today. It's great to see Jasmine, Andreas, Konstantin, and Satoshi on orbit. The crew's doing well. They looked excited on orbit. And, you know, the rest of their day, there was a phasing burn that we did about 4:15 a.m. Eastern. There'll be another burn tonight at 8:37 Eastern. And then most of their day is, you know, getting out of their suits. They'll get some time to take a nap, have a meal, and do activities on Dragon. We're setting up for the docking. You know, it's early Sunday morning. There will be an approach initiation burn at about 7 a.m. Eastern time. It's about a 29-hour journey to the space station this time. and docking would be about 8:39 a.m. Eastern on Sunday, so a little over 29 hours from launch. We had a great countdown today, and I was very proud of our team. The NASA and SpaceX team worked through a pretty challenging problem, and Benji Reed will talk more about that, but we had an indication of some NTO vapor in one of the sensors that reads that vapor as it comes out of the service section. We needed to take our time and talk through that and make sure that we didn't have any significant items going on with the prop system. The team did that. It was great to watch Stu Keach of SpaceX in particular and John Posey from NASA work together and get through that problem today. And just to me, it's a tribute to the whole team and how we've grown over the years of flying in space together between NASA and SpaceX. It was a busy week, I would say, all the way back to the flight readiness review. During the crew dry dress, we had an O2 sensor in Dragon that was a little erratic. It's one of 5 sensors used to measure the O2 as we inject O2 into the cabin and keep that oxygen level right. So we swapped out that sensor, checked that out, and got into the countdown later on. We did delay 1 day off of our original target, the 25th, and we took a little extra time. SpaceX, out of an abundance of caution, when we had the low flow prop isolation valve corrosion on the valves that we talked about at the flight readiness review, out of an abundance of caution, they went back and looked at every single valve on the vehicle and looked at a parameter we call force margin. And that really is the margin to open and close for a valve. And so they wanted to do that for all the valves, and it took a little bit more time to get through the ECLS valves. And these are valves that inject oxygen and air into the vehicle to allow that cabin atmosphere to be at the right pressure and for the crew to have enough oxygen to breathe. And so we wanted to make sure that we understood that force margin for all the nominal cases and also any contingency cases that we might get into. And we did that over the last 24 hours, and I'm really proud of the team. We stood down at SpaceX's recommendation to take an extra time to look through that data. We had a mission management team today. We got through that data and all polled to go to proceed, and so we got into the countdown today. Just super proud of our team. Congrats to the NASA and SpaceX teams. I also want to thank the international partners for their trust in the CCP program at flying all our crew members, and then also thank the U.S. Coast Guard, the Space Force, the FAA, and all the agencies that we work with to make this flight happen today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Joel.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you for joining us today. Congratulations to SpaceX, our international partners, and all my NASA colleagues. What an outstanding launch and an awesome way to start a Saturday morning. Since we last talked, we had a progress launch, a Russian progress launch, and a Russian progress docking, and that went all nominal. As Steve said, this vehicle can dock just after 8:30 Eastern on Sunday. Hatch opening will be about 2 hours later. The vehicle will stay docked to the International Space Station for about 180 days. We'll have about a 5-day handover with Crew 6. Now, the exact day when we undock will be based on weather. The other cool thing we're doing, as I mentioned earlier, is we're going to do a fly around in the International Space Station and get some cool photos and get that out to everybody and show what an awesome outpost we have. During the 180 days on board, the team will do a lot of utilization and research. We have them fully staffed the whole time. The way we've been operating Space Station is just maximizing the use of utilization, research, technology development, et cetera, in addition to the commercialization activities we do. But looking forward, we have a Soyuz launch scheduled for mid-September, September 15th, and then a Soyuz landing on the 27th of September. That crew, when they come home, will be on orbit just over 370 days. With that, again, a huge thank you to everybody, and I'll hand it over to Benji.
Thank you, Joel. As always, it's an honor to be here. It's kind of mind-blowing. I think I probably said that many times, to believe that we've been here and having these conversations and be able to be with these great partners and friends through all of these adventures of sending astronauts to space and bringing them home safely. Again, I think it's been said a number of times, but how cool is it to think that we have our fully international crew on board Dragon. It's really special, including our partners from Roscosmos and from JAXA and from ESA. It's a wonderful part of what we hope to do as a company, as SpaceX, and all of our partnerships, ultimately to make life multiplanetary. That means taking all of humanity and all of human life and helping us all be able to reach to the stars and go to different places. And every time we get an opportunity to fly, astronauts to the International Space Station is another step in that goal. So thank you, everybody, for this opportunity. It's interesting also to me to think that when I first started at SpaceX myself, we had not yet gone to the space station with Dragon. We'd launched a Dragon orbital. In this time, since we've been working together with NASA, we've now gone to the space station 39 times. We've flown 20 reflown Dragons, and altogether we've flown 42 humans in space, which is pretty awesome. I want to kind of talk a little bit about the process, what Steve Stitch mentioned about the NTO leak. Just as a reminder, NTO is 1/2 of the hypergolic propellants that we use on Dragon. It's the nitrogen tetroxide. And of course, in any case, you want to make sure you're measuring the pressures and temperatures and any substances that you're concerned about whenever you're flying spacecraft. In this case, when we had moved the arm away, the crew arm away, we got a measurement from basically an exhaust outlet from the service section, and that sensor measured a very little bit of NTO. It was probably on the order of about 1/4 of a part per million. So a very tiny amount, but in an abundance of caution, of course, we wanted to assess that, understand why were we getting that reading at all. So we stepped back and as Steve talked about in close coordination with the NASA teams, we stepped back and assessed what that, if it were really any kind of a leak, what would that mean? How much could it actually be? The teams did something like that, which was really cool. They actually sent 3 different engineers off to do the calculations, with sort of the instructions to go work the calculations independently and don't talk to each other and come back and tell us what you would come up with. And so in the short period of time during the count, the engineers did that, came back, and independently all came up with the same number that basically gave us the number of if there really were any leaking, how much would that be over time, particularly over the course of the entire mission, assuming a 210-day mission on station, kind of the max. And the good news was that the number that we came up with was well within the range of what you might normally see in any kind of system, a little bit of leaking around seals and around closed valves anyway. So it was within that range. And it gave us over an order of magnitude, so over 10 times the amount of margin that we would need to see against any kind of concern. So with those 3 independent calculations in hand, the teams, re-reviewed the data and agreed that we were go to launch. It's that kind of a partnership with NASA and the international partners and within SpaceX and the engineering that we do to ensure that, we take the astronauts to the station, get them there safely, and bring them home. On that note, it's important to note that we are mid-mission. And the astronauts are on their way to station. So for this first piece of the mission, we're still underway, and so far so good. Things are looking good. The crew is doing well, and Dragon is healthy. It's also important to remember that we have another Dragon with crew on station. So as part of this whole process, when we send crew up, we need to bring more crew members home. So we're looking forward to bringing the Crew 6 crew home to their families safely in just a matter of days. I think really that's, again, it's an honor to be able to take all of these people and take good care of them. It's a great thing to have the support and to be able to support all these agencies. So again, thank you to NASA, to JAXA, to ESA and Roscosmos, and to the United States Space Force for all of their support and trust. And with that, I'll hand it over to Sasaki-san.
Thank you for the introduction. First, on behalf of JAXA, I'd like to extend my gratitude to NASA, SpaceX, and international partners, and all the members who on the ground who devoted for the Crew 7 launch and continuous IS operations. As I reported earlier, the Crew Dragon was launched into the orbit as planned. The mission is still ongoing, so though I'd like to congratulate all of you on the successful launch. It is a great pleasure not only for me, but also Japan, that the Japanese astronaut board the Crew Dragon continuously and contribute to the ISS operations on orbit with international partners. I have no doubt that the Crew 7 mission is a symbol of solid international partnership. I do believe that the international partnership has been and will continue to be a key to bring a numerous benefit available without the ISS. I believe that Satoshi will carry out a variety of the missions, which includes life and material and physical science and technology demonstration for future lunar exploration. His expertise cultivated in the space and on the ground will contribute to the success in these missions. And this is the first Japanese astronaut flight after the Japanese government committed its participation in the extension of ISS operation until 2030, and Gateway Implement Arrangement signed addressed the Japanese astronaut to the Gateway. I'm confident that Japan will continue to take a leading role in the human endeavor by making the best use of our expertise and expand the horizon of the space exploration with international partners to bring benefits for all humankind. I'm deeply honored to witness the historical moment with you. Once again, congratulations on the successful launch. I pass the ESA Director General, Joseph Ashbaka.
No, thank you. Thank you also from my side, and congratulations. What a day. Our 4 astronauts are on the way to the space station. It's really an exciting moment, and of course also on behalf of ESA, I really would like to congratulate all our partners, but thank in particular NASA and SpaceX for having achieved this milestone and this wonderful launch. Of course, we are looking forward to the docking and then, of course, the work of the astronauts on the space station. For me, as Director General, this is now the fourth astronaut launch that I witness. I've been in office since a bit more than 2 years, and we had quite a continuous presence in the ISS. We had Thomas Pesquet, we had Matthias Maurer, Samantha Cristoforetti almost continuously, and now with Andreas Mogensen, the 4th astronaut, in a very short period of time. And this is really also showing that Europe is committed, Europe is strongly engaged in exploration. We want, of course, to even further increase our engagement because we want to be a good partner to our international partners in the ISS and working together. So this is really a highlight for us. Altogether, I've just recently read that 269 astronauts since 2000 have been going to the space station from 21 countries, and I think this really shows also with today's launch of 4 different nations representing 4 different agencies that this is really an international endeavor. And for the part of Europe, I'm really very happy and very proud to say that we are a strong partner in this undertaking on the ISS, and this is really a big honor, but also a great pleasure to be a partner of the space station. Andreas Mogensen is an ESA astronaut, is one of our existing core of astronauts. We have also selected a new group of 17 astronauts just in November last year. So we're really increasing our presence in the future in space, and this is part of a wider operation which we are planning in Europe. We call it Revolution Space, which is an initiative, an activity where we want to be sure that we are delivering on our commitments to the international community and that we are increasing and stepping up our European activities in space. Andreas will be the first non-American pilot of the Crew Dragon, and this is something that, of course, gives us great pleasure, but also is a sign of trust that the other space station partners are putting on us, on ESA, and Andy Morgensen in particular. And I really would like to thank our partners for having accepted Andreas to pilot the Crew Dragon on the way to the space station. It's a big deal for us, and I really appreciate this honor, and I'm very grateful for that. He will then on the station presume or assume the commandership. Again, this is something that is showing the trust that these international partners put also in ESA as a very strong partner in the space station. And let me really underline and highlight that we have many very active and strong activities with NASA, with JAXA, with Roscosmos and on the space station that we are conducting together, but with NASA in particular on the Artemis program, Mars sample return, and many other domains. And with JAXA, just yesterday we had a discussion on some of the international cooperations which we're having. So this is really a sign and a symbol of how strong this partnership is in space. I'm very happy to see that. Andy will lead a number of science experiments. There are about 30 European experiments he will work on. 10 of them are funded through the Danish government by Denmark through the ESA system. And they will focus on climate, health, and the application of space for domains on Earth, so for space applications as we know it. Examples are to study atmospheric phenomena like lightning, the impact of sun radiation through the well-known aurora, several health-related experiments, and technologies such as 3D printing or virtual reality setups, exercises which he will conduct. Let me also say that Andreas Morgensen is very committed to sustainability, biodiversity, and he is engaged as an ambassador with the Wild Nature Foundation and nature conservation. And this is also reflecting the domain of climate change and green transition, which is a top priority for ESA, for Europe, and Andy is conducting and is working very strongly in this. A last word, apart from thanking, of course, NASA, SpaceX, Japan and Russia for this excellent cooperation. I would also like to say a word of thanks to my own teams in ESA. They have done a fantastic job to make this happen. Every mission is a major effort, and really a big thank you also from here, from Cape Canaveral, to my colleagues in ESA, either the ones are here at the Cape or the ones that are back in Europe working to make this possible. And this is something that is really very nice to see, and thank you also from that point of view to all my teams. Thank you very much.
And thank you all for those opening remarks. This is certainly a global effort. So now we're going to open up the floor for questions. If you are joining us on the phone, please press *1 to enter the question queue. And if you are joining us here in the room, please raise your hand and give us a moment to get a microphone to you. All right. Let's take this question here in the front, right here on the edge.
Marcia Dunn, AP. A quick one for Benji and then an overall question. How much time did you have left to spare when that leak got cleared? It was unclear when that went away. And for everyone else, Frank Rubio and the Russian cosmonaut weren't supposed to be up there a year. So are there any plans to deliberately keep a Japanese, European, or a NASA astronaut up there for a full year to get more knowledge as you prepare for the moon and one day Mars? Thanks.
Great. I'll start. Thanks, Marcia, for the question. It was low in the count. I mean, we were working that problem and we cleared it. I think it was within the last 2 minutes of the count. Yeah.
As far as long-term astronauts, at this time, we're not planning any additional one-year missions. We are working with the NASA Human Research Program and across the partnership on doing some experiments with the crew before they launch to help build a collection of data such that if we did extend astronauts, we'll have that information such that we can use for future programs. But at this time, no additional one-year missions in the future.
And also maybe for ESA, for Europe, our plan is to continue with the 6-month missions. So this is what is, of course, planned now with Andy, but also for the next assignments.
All right. Thank you so much. Would you like to add?
And I was just going to add that our science team would like to see more one-year missions. So we're always looking for ways that we might be able to make that happen. But as Joel mentioned, we don't have any scheduled right now.
Great. Thank you all so much. We have a question right next to Marcia as well.
Hi, it's Bill Harr with CBS News, and this is kind of a question for Benji and for Steve Stitch. And Benji, I appreciated the explanation of the N2O problem, because whenever you hear N2O on a loop, you get kind of antsy about that if you know anything about N2O, right? And Steve, you mentioned the valve problem you guys had. My question is this. I do not understand, and I think a lot of reporters have the same feeling. I don't understand the lines of authority for telling reporters what's going on with a SpaceX rocket. And what I mean is, when you guys scrubbed the launch the other night, it took an hour, before a 1-2-sentence statement came out that just said you scrubbed. It didn't say why, it just said you scrubbed. I mean, bus drivers were saying you were scrubbed, okay? So, I don't understand the delay, how many people apparently have to sign off on one of these things, okay? And then when the release came out later in a blog about what that valve problem was, Steve, it was incomprehensible. If you go back and read it, there's no way you understood what was going on with it, and yet you delayed the launch a day because of this, which means there's some seriousness to it, or you wouldn't have delayed, right? I don't understand the flow of information, and everything we hear out here is, well, NASA can't talk about a SpaceX rocket because it's their rocket. I get that. SpaceX, delays a Starlink launch and just says we're delayed. They don't tell you anything about it. It's their rocket, it's their payload, and that's fine. But a taxpayer-funded mission with NASA astronauts on it, it's like pulling teeth to get information. And I don't understand who has authority to tell us what. Do things have to all go through SpaceX? Or does NASA PAO have any ability to tell us in real time when something like it's scrubbed? That's basic. That's like the sun is up. So I'm sorry if I sound agitated, but this has just been building, and I don't think I'm alone out in the reporter community to talk about these things. It's very frustrating, and it's hard to get information. And I say that even though, Benji, whenever you come to one of these news conferences, you tell us more than we need to know. I'm not complaining about what you tell us. I'm complaining about when we get told, okay? So I'll stop there. I could talk for a while, but anyway, go ahead.
I'll start. We probably could have done a better job of getting out a release when we delayed the launch yesterday. I'll take the hit for that. We were in the middle of a Dragon mission management team, and we could have done a better job at saying, hey, we've just scrubbed for 24 hours. And the valve problem, I'll talk a little bit about the life support valves. It was really, no kidding, we wanted to take the extra time. And so if our blog wasn't comprehensible, I'll try to do a little better job of explaining it. Again, when we had the issue with the stuck valve on the CRS-28 cargo flight, we stepped back between SpaceX and NASA and wanted to look at all the valves across the vehicle, not only the prop valves, but also the ECLS valves. And we were working through that assessment just to better understand. We certified the vehicle at NASA many years ago that we have a requirement that says on every valve you have to have a force margin of 25%. That means open and closed force that's required to close that valve. You ought to have a little bit more force in reserve in case something happens and you can't close the valve. These valves are very critical for putting oxygen in the system and nitrogen in the system, keep the cabin pressure where it is, and when the crew breathes, you have to replace that oxygen. So we weren't quite sure we understood the force margin, and we didn't have all the analysis done, and so we said, hey, let's stand down for 24 hours and make sure we understand it before we go fly, because we wanted to understand the risk to the crew, and so we did that, and that's what we tried to say in the blog. Basically, is we needed a little more time. There was no problem, and this is a little different than most of our scrubs, where there's a problem with the vehicle, where we know we have a problem with an engine or a component on the vehicle. This was different in that Dragon was doing fine at the pad, Falcon 9 was doing fine at the pad, but we really just wanted an extra little bit of time to go through and assess that situation with the ECLS valves. And so we tried to put out a blog relatively soon when we got done with our meeting and could look at the steps going forward, and I think we ended up putting it out probably close to 2 a.m. Eastern time, so we can do a little bit better. But again, in terms of authority, we worked together with NASA and SpaceX to determine, the next launch attempt and what the course of action is, and I would say we probably could have done a better job of getting the notice out that we scrubbed.
And Bill, I just thank you for your feedback. I think it's important that we hear feedback and we understand, because as a taxpayer and all of us, we want to make sure that we are providing the right information. So, but I will say for sure that we are a joint team, just as we do in the execution, the missions, the operations. I am always pleased with how our comms team and PAO work together, and Steve and his team and all of our team at SpaceX work really hard to make sure we're getting the right data out there. But we appreciate that feedback very much.
Thank you for those answers. Questions again here in the front on this side?
Hey, good morning. Aaron Cooper with CNN. Can you talk to me a little bit about the valves? Did anything need to be changed? Were there any problems associated with them, or was everything nominal? I understand this was just understanding the forces required. No changes forecast based on that information. Nothing was oiled, for example, or anything like that. And when in the process did you realize you were going to run out of time on this analysis?
Okay, great. So the first question about the valves. Yeah, at this point, yeah, we cleared all of the valves on the Dragon, on both Dragons that are in space right now. So that's really the critical piece, right? Before we go launch the current Dragon, Crew 7 Dragon, we wanted to make sure that we had scrubbed the data. And to make sure everybody understands, what we're really talking about is going back into all of the test data, all the analysis, for the system in general as a design, but also specifically looking at each valve and each of its acceptance testing to really make sure are we clear about the margin that we have for all of those. So really this is a data scrub, if you will, a records scrub. So we go through and make sure absolutely that we've checked it all. Given that we were able to clear all of that information and all of the testing that had gone in at the component level and then the subsystem, the system, the vehicle level, all that testing that led up to it, we're able to clear the whole vehicle, and therefore didn't have to go do anything, oil the valves. But it's a good question. I don't foresee us needing to go make any changes, at least at this point in the future. And for the record, I think it's important to understand we also do that for the Dragon on station, right? Because we also have to make sure that we clear those valves and clear that vehicle so we can bring that crew home safely. In terms of coming into the count, our launch director, actually, after the operation was all over, after we got the crew safely to space, our launch director I was chatting with him, and he said something really great, which is, we weren't trying to solve that problem in order to launch. It's worth repeating, right? We're not trying to solve that problem so we can launch. And so when our engineering teams and our leadership teams and our operation teams are working an issue in real time with the count doesn't matter. It matters so that we're aware of where we are, when do we need to make a call, right? In this case, this was kind of binary. It's either do we have the data that assures us that we're safe to launch, or if we don't. If we didn't, great, that's okay. We'll stand down and try another day. If we have the data, great. But the efforts of the team is never in the direction of, well, we got to go launch. They're working the problem to make sure we're safe. And then if that's worked in the time frame, then we launch. And in this case, we're able to take it down basically to low in the count, within a few minutes of the count, and that was okay. Really, that's plenty of time based on what we needed to know, because at any point we can call the launch. Hopefully that helps. Yeah.
Thank you for that answer, Benji. Back here in the room, we have somebody in the second row, in the center here.
Yusuke Tomiyama, the Yomiuri Shimbun, Japanese Daily. My question is to Mr. Montalban. Regarding the ISS extension, in April, NASA announced that US, Japan, Canada, and ESA agreed to continue the ISS operation through 2030, while Russia confirmed that it would support continued the station operation through 2028. So there seems to be a gap of 2 years. So how can we understand this gap, and how do you make up this gap?
So I'll start that. So, everybody asks that same question, and so let me help you answer it. The way Roscosmos does their work, they do in 4-year increments. And so we were all agreed to 2024. Roscosmos did 2024 to 2028. The important thing is we all extended past 2024, and we'll work together. As we get closer to the end of the decade, the partnership will continue to meet, and we'll look at what makes sense. As you know, NASA is in the process of developing the commercial LEO destinations. At this time, we don't want a gap in low Earth orbit. And so if those commercial LEO destinations are ready to go, then it'll be time to retire space station. If they're not ready to go, then the partnership will sit down, talk together, and do whatever we can such that we don't have a gap in low Earth orbit.
Thank you, Joel. Any other questions here in the room? We have in the very back there. If we're able to get somebody the microphone in the back, thank you.
Hi, Will Robinson Smith, Spaceflight Now. A question for Benji Reed and potentially Steve Stitch. I know progress is continuing on with the development of the crew tower for Pad 40. When is it first expected to be used for a crewed mission, and what are some of the benchmarks between now and then? Thanks.
Great. Thank you. It's a great question. Just the context, of course, is that we're working on adding the capability to fly Dragon missions from Pad 40. That's bringing it back to Pad 40, right? Because that's where we started from, which is pretty cool. That, we're looking at bringing that capability online, towards the end of this year, early next year is where I think we're aiming for. The bottom line, though, is that it'll always be a great backup option and sort of a relief valve, if you will, from a manifest viewpoint. So if for whatever reason, we need to manage a priority Dragon mission, and we've got a conflict on Pad 39A, or for whatever other reason we're not able to fly out of 39A, then we could use Pad 40. As you probably notice on our manifest, Pad 40 is a real workhorse pad. That's where a ton of our launches are going out of. So the ultimate goal would be to continue what we do. But you're also probably noticing that we're flying more missions out of 39A, especially Falcon Heavy missions. So it'll be nice to have that as a backup or a relief valve. But currently there's not a specific mission to target to say, oh, we're going to fly this specific mission out of 40. We'll see when it comes up to when we need it. But we've been working closely with NASA and our internal teams to make sure we have that capability ready.
And I would say from my perspective, I went over to the hangar earlier this week and got to see a lot of the segments for the tower. SpaceX has done an incredible job of getting those segments together. I think you'll start to see it look a little bit like a crewed tower pretty soon here toward the end of this calendar year. Once the pad is built out, we have the crew access tower there, then we have from a NASA perspective, we have a certification process we have to go through for the various components on that pad for the crew access tower, the crew access arm, and then the various systems on that pad, which are a little different than 39A. And we'll be working through that with SpaceX later this calendar year and then into next year. And then, as Benji said, when we'll look at the manifest later on, and it'll be great to have that capability. I suspect we'll start. One good thing is not only can we fly crew Dragons from there, we can fly cargo Dragons for Joel as well. And I suspect we'll start with the cargo flight on the NASA side. We haven't really picked out which one that will be yet, but we'll start with the cargo flight, and then if we need to later on, do a crew flight.
Thank you for that answer. Anyone else here in the room? Ken Kramer?
Ken Kramer, Space Up Close. Thanks. Congratulations on a great mission. We just picked up our cameras. Everything looks great. So I missed most of the briefing. But Josef Aschbacher, let me ask you, what's the future of ESA astronauts on these commercial Dragons? You had 3 in a row earlier, and now you have Morganson. What is the future?
Yeah. I mean, what is the future? So thanks for the question. What we have is, as you know, we have a partner agreement with NASA to fly our astronauts on the space station. That means we are contributing to several aspects of the space station or the Artemis program, which gives us the astronaut flights. So we have 6 flights planned before the end of this decade. We are, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we have a new batch of astronauts in training. We have selected 17, the last ministerial in November last year. 5 of them are in training right now as next astronauts, and they are the most likely candidates to then go to the ISS.
What would be the next flight for release an astronaut?
It's not yet.
6 months.
Yeah, it's not yet decided. So now we have Andy Morganson in orbit. It's not yet decided, but of course we have first to train the existing ones, so the 5 that are in training. They've just started in April this year. It takes about 1 year for the base training. Then, if the astronaut is selected for a specific mission, it takes another almost a year for training. So you already see that we are having a small gap here between Andy and the next ones to come. The date is not fixed yet, but it's probably in the end 25, early 26 time frame.
Thank you, Josef. Back to the room. All right. Well, not seeing any more hands raised, I think that will wrap us up this morning for today's briefing. Thank you so much to our panel for being here this morning and for the media who stayed up late or early to help us cover this mission. Crew 7 is now on its way to dock to the International Space Station, and it should arrive there at 8:39 a.m. on August 27th. A live joint coverage of docking and the Crew 7 welcome ceremony is scheduled for 6:45 a.m. on NASA TV and SpaceX's YouTube channel. Again, thank you all for joining us this early morning. And until next time, go NASA, go SpaceX, and go Crew 7.
So we've got Crew 7, and they are doing their suit checkouts. And here they come, the astronauts walking down the hallway at astronaut crew quarters. And here they come, Crew 7, taking their first steps outside before their journey to space.
Here they go, doors are closing.
This begins the drive across NASA's Kennedy Space Center to Launch Pad 39A. And there's Jasmine Mobelli, the commander, and Andreas Mogensen, our pilot. There go our pilot and commander carefully getting in. And here come our mission specialists, Konstantin Borisov, and on the right, Satoshi Furukawa. Technicians working to close that side hatch.
1, engine full power, and liftoff. Go Falcon, go Dragon, go Crew 7.
Endurance ascends, an international crew destined for the International Space Station.
Stage 1
That's
propulsion is
1.7
nominal.
million. Good pause from the propulsion officers here. Propulsion's nominal.